Let's talk about Lord John's biggest secret first of all,
Yeah,
and get that out of the way.
Oh, absolutely. Lord John is a gay man, which in the 18th century was not an easy thing to be. He is also a member of the aristocracy. He's the younger son of a very prominent family, the one that has its own scandals and disgraces in its history. And he's also a soldier. He's a major in the British Army. Consequently, everything that he holds of value, in other words, his family and his regiment, as well as his life, is likely to be lost if anyone ever finds out what he is. So, as I say, this gives him built-in conflicts, because he is a very honorable man, and one that's deeply self-aware. He's not going to deny who he is, or try to suppress this, as many people did, and still do in some places. He admits entirely what he is. At the same time, he has to live completely in secrecy. There are very few places and very few people with whom he can be entirely open. That's why he values Jamie Fraser. Not only does he have a deep sexual attraction to Jamie Fraser, but because of Jamie's position. Jamie does know this about him and disapproves entirely, but because of his position as a convicted Jacobite, he can't tell anyone, and if he did, they wouldn't pay any attention. They would just assume, he was trying to get the major into trouble.
Just as a character, Jamie is pretty much what Jamie is.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, I like him, love the man, but he's pretty much, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He is what he is what he is. I mean, he's a straight-talking Scot.
Very open, very honorable, but yeah.
I suspect Lord John is more fun to write because he's got these multiple levels.
Well, he talks to me easily, as I say. Jamie really doesn't. I mean, he talks to Claire, and I can hear him and so forth, but it's fairly rare that I actually have a scene come to me in Jamie's point of view. It does happen now and again, and he's got, a grimmer side to it when he's thinking to himself and all that, but no, he doesn't talk to me quite as easily as Lord John does. I understand Lord John, and as you say, he's a person with multiple layers, and because of his conflicts, on the one hand, he's deeply romantic, deeply honorable, loves his family, would do anything to protect them, lives for the British Empire, you might say. At the same time, he's certainly very familiar with the underside of seamy London, you might say. He knows where the mollywalks are, these being the 4 or 5 places where homosexual men would go in London to find each other.
The actual story that Lord John falls into, I guess it's the two big pistons firing. Is it worse to be a Jacobite or a sodomite? And he's sort of trapped between accusations of both, one of which is true.
That's right.
Although he does he's sympathetic to Jamie, even though he's fought against his cause.
Yes, Well, he's, as I say, a very intelligent and honorable man. He recognizes, honor on the other side. And he realizes that in some degree he's actually done wrong to Fraser, depending on how you look at it. From Jamie Fraser's point of view, he certainly has. Jamie Fraser would much have preferred to be transported with the rest of his men to the Caribbean or to America. It might have meant his death or that of some of the others, but, he would have been with them. And it was being the leader of these men, taking care of them and so forth, that was keeping him alive while in prison. Okay, suddenly that's taken away from him. He's not allowed to speak to his family in the Highlands. He's completely isolated. He's kept here, in captivity, essentially. And from his point of view, he's preserved only by Lord John's unholy lust, as he puts it, which offends him considerably. So he's just furious at John for most of this book. From John's point of view, of course, he didn't want Jamie to be to die or be harmed by being transported. He knew he'd never get back to Scotland if that were the case. Whereas here, he not only has a chance eventually of freedom, but while he's there, he has a good deal of physical freedom. He's not confined except to the borders of the estate, which is a large one. He has congenial work to do. He's a groom. He likes horses. He's good with them. So, it's a menial occupation. And, it is humiliating, but at the same time, Lord John feels he's done for him what he could. And then he admits that there's an ignominious motive, too. He loves Jamie Fraser. He doesn't want him to be lost forever in America. He wants to be able to see him now and again.
And Lord John gets some... Well, I think he falls. Is it fair to say he falls in love? I think it's not just carnal lust.
No, it's not at all. No.
Which is thwarted for a great chunk of the book, by the way, before the two of them get together.
That's why chapter 18 is titled "Finally."
18? I realized it was a long way. It was chapter 18.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he does, fall in love with this person. However, given his relationship with Jamie Fraser, he's got sort of a different standard of love than another man in his position might, and he feels this sort of conflict. On the one hand, he realizes he's never going to have a romantic relationship with Jamie Fraser. The other hand, what he does share with Fraser is very substantial. They're both men of honor, they're both leaders, they're both soldiers. They have this great bond in common, which they were great friends, in fact, before the rift that happened before this book. And he is not about to abandon that or lose it. So this is one of his bedrock things, that he loves Jamie Fraser. Therefore, he's reluctant, to profess love for this other man for whom he has a deep attraction. But he says to him, our kindness and honor are not enough for you, kindness and affection. And his partner, and he adds, I don't think you're in love with me either, exactly. And his partner doesn't answer, but he says kindness and affection and are perhaps not enough. But then he grabs Lord John and sort of digs his fingers into his flesh of his breast and says, add that though, and I think it might suffice. Their relationship, then continues from there and deepens, and so there's very little doubt that at the point when other things happen, Lord John is in fact in love with this man, and he admits it to himself later. But at that point, it is much too late.
The book is Lord John and the Brotherhood of the Blade. I've been speaking with the author Diana Gabaldon, and Lord John and the Brotherhood of the Blade, published by Doubleday Canada.